This is the Coming Home Podcast with John Allen. 3, 2, 1. And welcome everybody to this episode of Coming Home with John Allen. I am your humble host, John Allen. I want to remind everybody that when you look on the description of this episode, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on a podcast platform, in that description you'll see several links where you can click in if you'd like to support the work that I am doing. And now, Brad Staubes.
Hello.
Hello. This has been a long time coming. I was telling you before we went live, I've been looking forward to meeting you face to face for years.
Yeah, me too.
And here we are.
Here we are.
You
instantly recognizable when I pulled into the driveway.
The one and only, as they say.
And you were on the balcony like Juliet. Come this way. That was cute.
Well, you won't get that kind of welcome in the wintertime because it's cold on that balcony. But as long as the weather holds, I always greet my guests from the balcony.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. It's really good to have you here. I love meeting new people. Now, people look at social media very often as something negative.
Yes.
Let's not kid ourselves. It is negative.
Yeah. Lots of negativity.
But there's also some beauty out there. And that brings me around to wanting to meet you all these years. I think we just ran into each other on the Americans in Norway group. Yep. Yeah. And your sense of humor just flows. Yeah. Your tasteful and non-mean-spirited snarkiness.
I wonder if everybody on Americans in Norway would agree with you on that.
You've pissed some people off. You have. But past all of that, you're quite the artist.
Yeah. Especially when the pandemic got started again, or when the pandemic happened.
It was a reflowering of your art, right?
That's right. Because I had done a lot of painting, very realistic, in the early 90s. Started in 1990 till 1993, completely self-taught, but somehow interested enough, passionate enough about it to do quite a lot in those 3 years. I did, I guess, about 45 paintings. Somehow managed to win Best in Show in the first art show I ever put a piece in.
Let me say this, looking at your art, I'm not sure that it's in chronological order, that the things that you've posted on your Facebook, is it?
Well, the things I've posted recently are in chronological order, but that's just since the pandemic. Okay. Because I was going to say all of it is good. So if that was like your art from day one, you've been you've possessed genius talent from the get-go. Yeah, thank you.
You have, I compare your art, if I can be free to compare your art. I compare it to Tiffany Troutman's art in the sense. Now, you guys draw and paint in two totally different mediums. Tiffany, and hi Tiffany, I'm sure you're watching. She paints, you paint these pastoral scenes. You've also done some portrait type of things as well.
Well, there's been a little bit of figurative stuff, but my stuff is most kind of half and half landscapes and still lifes. Fewer still lifes in recent years, but it was still lifes that I really started out doing. So, yeah.
And where did this curiosity about it come from?
Actually, it came from a couple specific artists that I got to know, American artists especially. When I was in my 20s, I got really interested in art history. And I'm not sure where that interest came from. I'd never taken a class, but I got really interested, bought a couple books on art history, started reading about art history, but also looking at paintings, looking at the empty walls of my apartment and thinking, well, I want to try this.
Now, are you talking about American art history or just art history in general?
Well, art history in general, but also specifically American art history. I lived in New York City at the time. I had the Metropolitan Museum just, a subway ride away. And I did. I went over and I hung out there.
That's a lot of input right there.
It's a lot of input, and I got used to looking very closely at paintings, not just admiring them as a picture, but also trying to understand how the artist did what he or she did. And in a museum, if you visit museums much, you know that if you're going to look at something really closely, you want to put your hands behind your back so as not to scare the docents, and you can get up right close and see.
Hold on, scare the who?
The docents or the guards.
Ah, okay.
Because if you start to point at a picture in a museum, they're going to get upset really fast. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So you put if you're looking at it close and you bring your hand up, they're gonna say, "Whoa, Sir, can you stand back?
I never would have thought about that.
Yes.
I probably would have caused a scene because I never would have considered
Well, it's just,
that.
they just tell you. But if you put your hands behind your back as you get in close to the painting, you're usually okay. And
they can breathe out and they know that
right,
you're
right.
gonna,
They know that I know what I'm doing,
Yeah.
but I'm not going to suddenly like touch it because that freaks out guards in museums. So anyway, close studying.
So this is I was going to say, this is studying. This is beyond admiration. This is actually studying.
Yeah, because I wanted to see, stand back and it's like, okay, there is a beautiful effect happening.
Yeah.
How did the artist get that effect?
Yeah.
Why does that peach look fuzzy? How did he manage to make that peach look fuzzy? And you go in close and
down on the level of detail that a lot of casual admirers of art maybe probably don't think about.
Well,
so
I think
you were several steps beyond that.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to figure out how this was done, and there is, there are some secrets. I think one of the funniest secrets is just the color gray.
Tell me about the color gray.
Well, it's actually gray that makes the peach look fuzzy. Who knew this? You draw this round peach, and then at the edge where it recedes away from you, if you pull out gray and back up on whatever color the peach is, red or yellow, and paint it gray, blend it in, suddenly the thing looks
See, and
fuzzy.
when you say that, I'm like, of course it does. But I never would. I would have just been one of those people who sit and wonder, how did they get such detail?
No,
but
I
of
really
course.
wanted to know.
Yeah,
and then it is magic. You're doing it yourself. Me on my canvas. It's like, okay, I saw him use gray, so I'm going to try it here. And it's like, it worked. So
Isn't that the beauty of art? Besides the finished project, isn't there beauty in that journey towards developing your own personal art?
Yeah, well,
I haven't done it so much with art. I started my little cartoon series, but my art is mostly my music. So that whole process of exploring, chord changes and theoretical things and the lyrical side of it, it feels good when there's a development there. And I would imagine it's the same thing, if not more so, with drawing, painting, sculpting, that type of art.
The way you describe your own music making, I think it does relate closely to my own painting, because I'm completely self-taught as a painter. And I don't know to what extent you're self-taught as a musician.
100% self-taught.
All right,
I don't know. I didn't know anything before I started, and I still don't know a lot. It hurts me to not have a better grasp of music theory.
Yeah. Well, as a musician, I am anything but self-taught.
I hate you.
So music theory, I know.
And you do it well. Just for those who are watching, listening, and you're not familiar with Brad, he is quite the musician. You are a vocalist, soloist, keyboardist, cello. Cello. Just like King Charles,
That's right. Oh, you did. Did you see that post I put up?
Again, that sense of humor. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's open for everyone to see that.
Actually, most stuff on my own Facebook profile.
Okay, I will link to
open.
it. People have to see that to get a grasp of this man's sense of humor. He put one of the funniest memes up about comparing himself to King Charles.
Yeah, well,
funny stuff.
It happened on a single day, just after the Queen died, and he became King Charles. Somebody posted a photo of him as a young man playing the cello. I was like, what? He played the cello? I had no idea. And then, not half an hour later, somebody talked about Prince Charles's paintings. I was like,
so that's he paints? Yeah.
And then, of course, I have big ears, which you can't see behind under the headphones. So there were 3 similarities, and then, of course, well, maybe should I tell the joke? Okay, so I mean, I'm gay and I'm married to a Norwegian man, and so of course the last one was that we were both married to big old queens. So
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. No, so that's your sense of humor. But back to and that's my sense of humor too. That's the kind of stuff I like, that kind of humor. But back to the musical stuff. Now, by the time you started getting into art, painting, you were already an established musician.
Yeah, I've been a professional musician my whole adult life. My whole adult life.
You had a lot of professional gigs back in New York City.
Yes, and Washington D.C. before that.
In D.C., yeah.
I started out mostly as a singer. I was already a keyboard player, but didn't really do that professionally much until I was in my 30s. But in my late 20s, when I graduated from college, I was singing in a small professional choir at the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception in D.C., auditioned for the chorus at the Washington Opera and the Kennedy Center, and managed actually to get a tiny solo role in my my first opera there. That was actually really exciting.
Nice.
Because the opera house at the Kennedy Center was like this huge thing, and even for my one tiny line, I was given this super grand entrance by the director. I think the point of that grand entrance was just to show how wealthy the party giver in this particular scene was. I was just one of her servants.
Okay.
But I was, I was given this huge, lavish entrance, really just to show how wealthy my boss in that opera was.
Opera.
Yeah.
Because I was going to ask, what is your focus when you're as a vocalist?
Well, I think
it is mostly
classical.
But you've also set foot in the gospel realm.
I have, because later in the U.S., when I moved to New York City, for 18 years, I was choir director at a Catholic girls' high school in northern Manhattan.
Okay.
And that was mostly Black and Hispanic girls. Yeah. And so I kind of stuck to spirituals, gospel, more rhythmic music, most of which I arranged myself for the girls. So that's where my music theory
came in handy.
Yeah, came in handy. I would write my own sort of arrangements, sticking close to the original style of the piece, usually. So as a job, that particular choir directing job was a great experience for me.
There's something about doing any kind of work. I worked as a teacher, doing any kind of work with kids. You have your downfalls, and you don't always succeed, and it hurts when you see a child struggling and you can't help them. But when you do help them, when you do bring them some kind of joy or some new knowledge as a teacher.
So you've taught?
Yes, I have. That was my first job when I came here to Norway. Oh, okay. I got headhunted, let me back up. I got headhunted and put in as the director of a social program here in Drammen at the ungdomsskole, the high school. And it was a program to help kids and families of kids who were, on the border to getting into trouble. Sometimes rather serious trouble. And it was my background as a police officer in the States that got me that job. So that was my first job. And then that project expanded to me keeping the project, but also working as a teacher at that school. So I was a music teacher. Oh, okay. Not the same kind of music teacher that you would have been, probably more like Jack Black in School of Rock. but I don't want to talk myself down. I don't have that musical theory background, but I do know music and I can perform it. So I started off as a music teacher, and then that expanded to being an English and social studies teacher. And I just loved it. It was that daily contact with the kids. They taught me Norwegian. I got that job before I could speak Norwegian. Oh, right. And just hanging out at that school, talking with the kids, within a couple, 3 months, I could converse. Cool. So it was quite the relationship.
Where did you have that job again?
It was here in Drammen.
Oh, okay.
We lived here in Drammen. We came to Norway in 2002, and we started off in Hudum with Snoopy's parents. Then we bought a house in...
is that where you... No, that's right. You moved from the U.S.
We married in the U.S.
Okay.
We had 2 weddings, actually, one here in Norway and one in the States. But we lived in the States for about 2 years. Then we came to Norway in 2002. Lived at first with our parents in Hudum, and then we bought our house in Nedre Eiker. Okay. And that whole time, we came in the summer of 2002, and I started working in October at the school here in Drammen. And then we moved up north in 2006. And stayed there until 2014, and that's when we came back. Okay. Yeah. I miss it. I wish we were up north still.
So you must, you have said that. I've heard you say that.
I say it constantly.
And I think you speak Nynorsk also.
Well, I speak a blending, a mix of Finnmark Norwegian and Nynorsk, and that's because when we were living with Snoopy's parents, her father, Samisk from Finnmark, and her mother, Vestlanding from Florø. So those were the 2 languages I heard, and then Snoopy speaks an interesting mix of that, plus the Hudum Drammen dialect. So I heard these mixes of dialects.
Mm.
So I got a foundation that was a mix of nynorsk and Finnmark.
Okay.
And then when we moved up north, I was pure Nordlending.
Oh, okay. But
so that's what I speak with.
Meanwhile, at the
now.
school, the kid you're speaking Bokmål with the kids, right?
It was a mix of all of that, of the Bokmål, of the Finnmark, of the nynorsk.
Mm.
But again, when we moved north, I pretty much dropped all the Bokmål and just ran with the Finnmark, which was easiest for me because that's what I heard most from Snoopy and from her father when I first came here. Language, to me, it's almost a musical thing.
Mm.
And I don't remember if I asked you a few minutes back, but I was going to ask you, when you started to learn painting, did it enhance? Did it block? Did it detract from your musicality? Because I have found that it's almost like I don't have enough place in my head for the arts. And I put language in there with the arts. As I would learn a new language. I was once fluent in Spanish and Japanese.
Okay.
Yeah. But as I started to learn Japanese, my Spanish faded out.
Mm.
And then when I came here to Norway, as I started to learn Norwegian, my Japanese faded out.
Okay.
I just don't have room for...
Yeah,
I just don't have room for that.
You know what? I do sympathize with that. We just bought an apartment in Gran Canaria. And
congratulations.
Thank you.
What a beautiful place to have an apartment.
Yeah. We're actually in Playa del Ingles. I'm not sure so many people would call that so beautiful, but it is right on the beach.
It's Gran Canaria.
Yes, it's Gran Canaria. And the weather is great.
Yeah,
And but because we bought this, I thought, okay, I studied some Spanish when I was a kid. What if I start to try to do that again? And I'm noticing that that my old Spanish is so trapped behind this thick layer of Norwegian. And anytime I want, even when I sort of am in the thick of studying Spanish and I want to pull up a new sentence, devise a new sentence, it comes out half full of Norwegian words. It's just
so
like...
you're kind of... when I was learning Norwegian, I would just all of a sudden, out of the blue, insert half a sentence of Spanish in my Norwegian. And people, you can kind of guess people looked at me a little funny. Mm-hmm. In fact, to this day, I run into people that I used to work with or some of my students from back then, and they think I'm, Black Hispanic, Latino, Black Latino, because I would insert so much Spanish back in those days. So, so as you were learning art, as you were jumping into the painting world, did that affect your musicality in any way?
I don't remember it affecting my musicality. No. I would have been, how old was I then? Late 20s. That's right. Yeah, I was late 20s. And I was still living, when I first started painting, I was still living in Washington, D.C. And I was doing a lot of professional music making. That was professional choirs. Oh, and also a lot of piano teaching. Okay, so that was a significant source of income during that period. And
instrument lessons are not cheap. Someone just was asking me to advise them on what they should charge for teaching guitar here in Norway. It's not cheap.
No, not cheap. Actually, I'm pretty cheap as a cello teacher, but I just have the one student, and she's like an old friend now, and I can't imagine.
I know.
Yeah. I mean, we just have fun together. But you know what? Honestly, no, I don't remember it having any effect on.
It probably didn't then.
On my music making.
Probably didn't.
Yeah. I noticed that there was a trade-off just this past summer between art, what I think of as two different kinds of art, which is that, as you know, I'd been painting quite a lot since the beginning of the pandemic. Quite a lot. I think I got...
You've been very productive.
Yeah, I think I cranked out some 40-something paintings.
Wow.
Most of them quite small, but still, one after the other. But when... Here's a different kind of story, but when... my husband and I were, in a sense, forced to move to our house in Sweden for about 6 weeks, where I have been wanting to do landscaping and gardening intensely for years. Yeah. I started doing that. It was May. Yeah. And I started doing that, and I haven't touched a painting since early May. So,
is that because you're getting some sort of artistic expression?
It is. Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah.
The garden. I call Snoopy an artist of sorts. First of all, she used to paint. She doesn't anymore. I wish she would take it up again. But and you'll see when we go into the other half of the house, what she's done with the plants and stuff. And this has been a project, as you can tell, it's getting colder here in Norway. So she's bringing in the plants.
Okay.
And I see she doesn't just drag in a pot and place it somewhere. I watch her when she does this. She'll bring it in and she'll stand there and she'll look around and she'll walk towards one end of the living room and then turn and walk to another, and then she'll put it there and then she'll study it. Okay. There's a lot of thought, and that's a form of artistic expression, I would say.
Yeah. Well, you haven't visited us in Oslo yet, but you'll see that
I've seen pictures.
Snoopy and I share that too.
And that's one of the reasons why she wants to meet you. She sees that you guys have an eye that is quite similar when it comes to those kind of things. She's no kind of interior designer, but she designs the interior.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Just like I play music, but I'm not a musician. Am I a musician? I'm a musician.
Yeah, you are.
You don't have to know music theory.
No. I mean, Pavarotti, evidently was not particularly skilled at reading music.
Prince didn't read music and didn't know the basics of music theory.
See?
I'm sorry, the intricacies of music theory. Of course he knew the basics, but maybe I should take cello lessons. No, I don't know if you're familiar with Rick Beato. I think I've mentioned him to you, but I think I sent you a video of him.
Yeah, I think you did. I was not other than the video.
That is, I need to just take the leap of faith and buy his. He's got it's like a 2,500 video long series of music theory from the very beginning. If you're a newborn. And all the way up to the most advanced stuff. I watch his YouTube videos every time he puts something out. I should just jump in and take that course of his. And I just think I'd be so much better at what I do if I had that theoretical foundation.
It can make a difference.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, it can also be a kind of a crutch, but it can also open up worlds of, I'm thinking essentially chord progressions that you might not have.
I might not have thought of.
Or twists of melody that,
that
you might not have thought could work.
Yeah, I can tell you since watching his stuff, just his YouTube stuff, not his courses, I've developed as a songwriter. I'm doing things with chords that I never thought to do before, just from watching a YouTube video of his here and there.
Yeah.
But you, I couldn't imagine. Well, I could imagine it, but that's quite the level of musicianship you get to when you start teaching.
Well, you mean from like teaching piano?
Or cello, piano, any instrument. When you get to the point where you're teaching people, you must be quite the knowledgeable musician.
Well,
because not only is it theory, it's also the technique, it's also the mechanics of it.
Well, one thing about me as a musician is that I'm so broad because I have played 4 instruments professionally, piano and organ and singing, which in this context I consider an instrument. Absolutely. And cello, and they have definitely fed into each other as far as a total universal understanding of how music works. So when I'm a pianist or an organist, I might have an especially strong sense of melody because I have also played the cello and been a singer. Yeah. And singers who work with me as an organist tend to really like to work with me because I understand that they need to breathe, that when the phrase, when the song is coming to its climax, you're going to want to stretch.
Crescendo. That's
right, all of that. So so I do think that it all feeds off each other.
Sure, absolutely. Well, he's just an all-sided fellow right here.
Well,
he's just
a lot of different kinds of music making in my life.
Back to the painting. Have you ever had any kind of displays, gallery displays? Sold anything?
I have. I mentioned that I won first in show at that, or best in show at that very first community art show that I entered.
And that was back in
that was back in New York City.
New York City, yeah.
I lived in the Hudson Heights, the Washington Heights part of New York City at the time, which is quite far north, and there was a community. Just sort of a community art show. They had 3 shows that were judged, and I had painted a large painting of the front of the Catholic Girls High School where I was the choir director, and that school was also in that neighborhood, and the painting actually came out really well. I still like it, and it was also quite large, so I entered that, and they gave it best in show. But because of that award, they also gave me half of a private show at a very popular local restaurant that also had a large side room. So I split, right over my 30th birthday, I split this show with another guy and had that.
What's that like, having your art out there on display like that?
That was,
a little scary?
Well, yeah, no, I don't. I wouldn't say it was. It wasn't scary for me because my stuff is so. It's honestly so representative, in a sense, so conservative. There's nothing particularly radical about it.
But you've painted some nudes before, haven't you?
I have, yeah.
That's not conservative.
No, that wasn't. In fact, this same community art show, I think, after I'd won Best in Show, I think I entered 2 different paintings that first time, and one of them won, and then the other one got an honorable mention. Then sometime later, I delivered a painting or 2 to the next art show that community, and one was a male nude, and the gallery was run by a husband and wife team, and the husband and wife got into an argument about whether this male nude, which was going to be allowed in the show. And he gave it a thumbs up and she gave it a thumbs down, and she ended up winning. And they expressed a lot of sort of, embarrassment and apologies, but
Lighten up, people. It's art.
Yeah. So
that's my answer.
Yeah, and it was also, I remember then later going through, because I left some other painting there. I remember going through the show and saying, okay, well, you know what? Here's a female nude, and here's another female nude, and here's yet a third female nude. And
okay,
so
is that strange how people? What is that thing? That human thing where we can, one is okay and the other isn't, just because the private parts look different. Or
right.
One has breasts as opposed to having a chest.
Yeah.
What is that?
If you know a long view picture of art history, it switches. There's a pendulum thing that goes on there.
Okay.
And that male nudes have been by far more common during certain periods of history, and then female nudes during others. And we're definitely in an acceptance of female nudes period now. So that's just sort of where we are. And
Pendulum swings.
Yeah. I wasn't particularly surprised or particularly upset, but it was, still kind of embarrassing to have the thing declined.
That must be a good feeling, though, to do all that work. You've got a bunch of your paintings, and they're on display at this event. And focus on you, the potential to possibly make money, but regardless of the money situation, just having your work up there, hanging on the wall for people to enjoy.
That was great.
Yeah.
It also coincided with my 30th birthday. So my parents, who lived outside D.C., came up, for it, and a bunch of friends ended up having a kind of birthday party right there in the room that the gallery was in, and
nice.
It was fun. I didn't sell anything out of that. I don't think that room functioned really as a gallery during the month that
That's probably important as far as setting the mood of the display.
Yeah, I just I don't think it. The art was up, but it wasn't really functioning as a gallery. It was just a separate room in this restaurant. So that didn't happen. But John Allen, almost exactly a year ago, I had a show in my own apartment that I advertised.
That's right, you did. You sure did.
It was during the pandemic, and I kept the show down to one single afternoon, one single 3-hour afternoon.
Yeah, I remember that.
And invited a whole bunch of people, but I invited them in shifts to keep the the number of people, down. Yeah. Honestly, for pandemic related reasons more than anything, and. It was a really fun show for me to put together.
I bet it was.
Because I made the apartment look as much like a really nice gallery as I could. Yeah. I took down lots of paintings that were already up and replaced them with my own. I took out a whole lot of the tchotchkes and small stuff just around the apartment so that it had a sparer look.
I bet it was gorgeous. You got a nice place there.
It's a nice place, and it was really fun to put this show together, and it worked well. And I had like 40 pieces up, 22 of which were for sale, and sold 15 in
That's
those.
beautiful.
I know. It's just like, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it.
Snoopy and I regretted it so much. She wanted to go, and I was had a little anxiety about the whole Corona thing, and that's why we didn't do it. And actually, I think I was sick at the time too. Not sick, recovering from one of my shoulder operations.
Oh yeah, I think. Yeah.
But afterwards, I'm like, we should have went.
Yeah.
Do it again so we can come.
Yeah, well, there was talk about maybe doing one, this year, but it can't be an annual thing because I don't paint that quickly.
I'm sorry, it can't be a.
It can't be an annual
Can't
thing.
be an annual thing.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. You got to have the product. And
That's
it
right.
takes time.
That's
yeah.
right. So
But again, you're quite prolific. You have been painting
when
a
I'm
lot.
when I'm really on a roll, it was my main focus during the first year of the pandemic. I was so into it, and I kind of miss it now. There were stages that every painting went through, and there was an excitement level at the beginning and an excitement level as it was nearing the end, and then yay, tomorrow I get to varnish it. That was always an exciting day because the painting takes on a special look when after it's varnished. And then, it's going to come back from the framer. So there was all these.
Well, what's in the way of you continuing with that now?
Nothing. Well, lack of momentum.
Wasn't the pandemic a mindset thing in many ways? Of course, there was the practicalities of people, working from home, some people losing their jobs, the practicalities of altered friendships and social life. But a lot of it was mindset. I found that I had a new focus on my podcast during the pandemic. And it's like, why did this have to happen for me to focus more on my podcast? Why at the tail end of the pandemic, in the shutdown, did I start really focusing on my writing? Didn't have to, it was just something. The time was right, I guess, but it seems to be a common thread among musicians especially, but maybe artists in general, that there was a heightened period of productivity during the pandemic.
Yeah, well, once in a while, like on Facebook, you see the question gets batted around. Okay, so in what way was the pandemic experience actually positive for you folks, And for me, the answer is always, my gosh, after a 25-year break, I started painting again. And for me, it was honestly just because I had been telling myself for a while, okay, I would like to try this again.
Yeah.
And then when the first lockdown happened, there was no excuse not to. I had the paints. I didn't even need to go to an art store. I had paints. I had brushes. The paints were 30 years old, but I had them.
Snoop has a set from when she was like 17, 18 years old that she hasn't even opened yet.
Yeah. And I think all but one of the tubes was completely usable still. Yeah. I'm still using them. So I had all the stuff. And I was just like, okay, now's the time.
But what is it about, you say you kind of use the pandemic as an excuse to get back to it, but what about the pandemic was the excuse?
Well,
if you could put words on that.
Absolutely. It was that we felt mostly trapped at home. I had no work. Even the time, all of my freelance, now as a musician in Norway, my main income comes from playing funerals in Oslo. And there were either literally no funerals or very few. Yep. And for technical reasons, I was kind of kicked out of the playing for a while. Yeah, very quickly, because I don't play in a Norwegian church. I play in the American Lutheran Church, which is outside the system. Yeah. So during the pandemic, they kind of closed ranks and only used people inside the system.
I see.
So
and that's always been so odd to me that the American Lutheran Church is outside of it's.
Yeah, no.
I get it.
No, it makes perfect sense because
does
because the Norwegian Lutheran Church, that's the old state church.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just stopped being the state church 10 years ago or whatever it was, and still has close ties with the state. They're still organized under some umbrella groups, and in fact, funerals in Oslo are all organized through this one central office. It's not done like it's done in the States at all.
Okay. That's news to me. Okay.
Yeah. And that one central office is very closely aligned with the remnants of the Norwegian State Church.
I see.
Yeah. So, so there are 5. This will be an interesting thing for folks to listen to on your podcast. But there are 5 or 6 sort of public cemeteries, large public cemeteries in Oslo, each of which has its own chapel. And where do the organists come from for these sort of public chapels? Well, they actually come from organist positions in the larger churches. Part of that position is that you play Tuesdays at Vestre Aker or Vestergravland, or you play Wednesdays at Grefsen or whatever.
Okay. So one central office that just handles all that.
That's right.
Brings in the organist and everything. And just the fact that the American Lutheran Church is American and not part of the Norwegian system.
That's right. Not part of the system.
Okay.
Yep. And, the Catholic Church and the Pentecostal churches and no other churches in Oslo are part of that system. It's just those old Norwegian Lutheran churches that are part of that system. So anyway, the answer to your question was I had no work.
Right.
My only work for months was my work at the American Lutheran Church, which was all it was recording videos of me leading hymns and doing some incidental music for the Sunday services. Okay. Because, of course, we did Sunday services online at 11 o'clock every Sunday, but I didn't have to be, on at 11 on Sundays anymore. No. I could pre-record my stuff, and I did. Okay. But that was all I had to do.
That was it.
And so...
so you've got this big block of time then.
Acres of time. Yeah. So that was the time.
I don't want to ask, I try to avoid asking any artists of any kind, whether it's a stand-up comedian, musician, painter, whoever. I try to avoid asking where do they get their inspiration from. But Brad, where do you get your inspiration from?
As an artist?
No, because you have such beautiful... And this is me trying to step into the world of a painter, which I think is a fascinating world. You paint these beautiful landscapes. Are these visions in your mind, or are these actual places?
They're always actual places.
They're always actual places.
They're always actual places. And the goal is to, in a sense, imitate that photograph I'm looking at as closely as possible, while also making some artistic decisions about taking things out.
And you do it so well. There are some of these paintings that you have that I've shown things to Snoopy, and she's had to look and double look and triple look. Okay, that's not a photograph. That's a painting.
Yeah, no, there are a few that have worked out really well that I'm really proud of.
Yeah. That's that comparison to Tiffany Troutman's art that I was going to say. She's drawn some portraits, painted some portraits that look like a photograph. And it's just fascinating that she and you can get that kind of detail in your works. You're shadowing, and I mean, it fascinates me.
Yeah, well, that was the process, especially as a self-taught artist. It's like, okay, how do I get this even closer to how it really looks?
How does that peach get fuzzy?
Yeah, how does the peach get fuzzy, or how do I make this the side of something round look like it's receding?
The powers of observation that you have to possess as a painter. Again, it fascinates me. It's just a fascinating form of expression. And I wonder, how do they do that? And there's no answer to that. It's practice, study.
Well, I think you're right.
Yeah. And also with of course, a big drop of natural talent. There's something in you that allows this source to be tapped. Mm-hmm. But it's time and it's study, right?
Yeah, and also
patience.
There's this sort of energy behind it all, this sort of passion, which I absolutely had and have.
Passion. Tell me about that. Where's what is this passion?
Yeah, I still when I go on vacation, I either like to go to the beach or to go to a big city and hang out in the museums and look at paintings. That's still one of my. And when I turned 50, what did we do? We spent my 50th. We spent almost a week in Paris for my 50th for my 50th birthday, so that I could hang out in the Louvre every other day. A lot
of stuff to study there. That's for sure.
Yeah. So that's obviously it's a very personal passion. It's very real.
Would you mind a little coffee for me, please?
Yeah, sure.
That's a great all natural organic blend.
It is delicious.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not a coffee connoisseur, but I like my coffee. And thank you so much.
There you go.
You can always go with the brand names, but I like looking at that weird brand name, especially if it says organic. It always tastes better. I don't even know what this is. I just know it was some
Okay.
Organic. I'm sorry, I keep saying organic. Ecological.
Okay. Yeah.
I always go for those whenever I see them, and some of them I wonder why they disappear. They might be on the shelves at many for a month or so, and then they're gone.
Oh.
And it could be the best coffee I'd ever had.
Yeah.
It just disappears.
Yeah.
Strange.
I'm not a coffee connoisseur like that at all. I noticed that happen in, was it what are they? Is it Dean and DeLuca? Dean and DeLuca that we have here, like the... Yeah. They were selling cinnamon candy for a while. And of course, cinnamon candy does not exist in Norway, and it's I love it. So they were offering it for about 3 months, and then it just went away and never saw it again.
What do you miss? What foodstuffs or treats or whatever from the States do you miss here in Norway?
That's probably the biggest one for me.
Is it?
Is cinnamon candy, and I always hoard it when I'm back in the States and bring back boxes. And I know I'm not the only person, like on the Americans in Norway Facebook page who does that.
Yeah.
There's at least one other guy who really loves cinnamon candy, and
honey-made graham crackers.
Oh yeah. Oh.
If I had easy access to those here in Norway, I'd probably weigh 100 pounds more than I do.
Yeah, you know what? I loved graham crackers when I was in the States too.
Every chance I get, if someone's headed that way and I catch them at the right time and ask them to bring it back, or of course every time we go, I've got to come back with some honey.
Yeah.
And I'm so mean. I don't share with the kids.
No.
I do not share with the kids.
Once in a while, Tron will hear me getting a hot tamale out of the box, and he's just like, it's like, I don't know if I can give you one because you don't
love
care.
them. We love them, but there are certain things that we
Right.
just will not share.
Right, and the only reason you want this is because you heard me having one, right? And you
don't interfere with the flow of my happiness.
No, right. And my husband is a twin too, so everything always had to be fair.
Okay.
Fair.
Yeah.
I'm not so into fair. I'm the oldest child, so.
I was going to ask you what brought you to Norway, but it should be who brought you to Norway.
Yeah, he did.
But how did you guys meet?
We
met in New York, I'm assuming?
We met through Match.com in New York.
Yeah.
I should have been the gay poster boy of Match.com back then. I should have. I broke up with my ex when I was 39 and signed up for Match. And I had honestly, I just had such a good experience. I had so many good dates. And
so this is almost 20 years ago.
Yeah, we just passed our 19th anniversary. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I've had 21 years with Snoopy.
Okay.
22 years as a couple, 21 years married.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, we have 19 as a couple.
So this is around 20 years ago. The online dating thing was not that popular back then, was it?
Well, I can tell you that it was in New York City. Because I mean, Match.com is obviously has been for decades.
Maybe I'm talking out my ass here. I don't know. How would I know what was popular back then? I was married and I wasn't really looking into the online thing, but I'm just trying to remember when it, at least in my mind or in my ears, when I started hearing a lot about the online dating thing. And I would say it was, since I've been here in Norway, maybe around 2010, 2012.
Yeah. Okay. So that's around when I joined Facebook.
Okay. Me too.
But we are back in 2002. And Match.com, at least in large urban areas, was already huge. Okay. And I know that because, what was I, a gay man about to turn 40.
Yeah.
And I filled out the whole sort of questionnaire on Match.com, and they gave me dozens and dozens of 90% matches.
90%, dozens.
Yeah, they're in New York City.
Wow.
So how, it was obviously not a fledgling.
Right.
If I could get dozens and dozens of close matches. And they were not wrong either. Because, I had a lot of interesting dates. I had a 4-month relationship with a guy who, I don't want to sound superficial, but, he was quite sexy, but also in a sense quite wealthy. And he had one characteristic that was, that really sort of turned my head, which was that he was renovating this huge historic house in the Catskills.
The Catskills is beautiful there.
Yes, very. So, so we had a 4-month thing that completely went to hell.
You ran out of money.
No, yes. See, it's not that superficial.
Yeah,
not. So we broke up in June of 2003, and then I met Trond in August of 2003. So kind of bang, bang, bang.
Did you ever have any? I've spoken to a lot of people on my show about this who have brought up the online dating thing. Was there any point where you felt nervous or apprehensive? Because these are people who, the algorithm or whatever says you're a match, but you don't know this person, and there's stories every once in a while you hear about.
You do hear, you hear stories.
Did you have any apprehensions about that?
I didn't, John Allen. You know what? That is just sort of not part of my personality.
No,
I'm weirdly bold about stuff like that. You can probably kind of tell from my face. Yeah,
but I wouldn't call it weirdly bold. I think it's admiral. Admiral. As opposed to a general. No, it's admirable. Brain fog, just to take a side step, brain fog after COVID. Oh my gosh. I've been, I don't know, I consider myself fairly smooth on the microphone, but since I picked up my podcast again after a 2-month pause because of COVID, I've noticed that I am really fumbling with my words, and just in casual conversation, sometimes I just lose track. What were we talking about? Right in the middle of talking to somebody.
Yeah, no, that's
brain fog is a real thing. I'm telling you, it's.
You are my person number 3 who is suffering from some kind of long COVID symptoms.
It's a real thing.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, thank you, but don't let anybody tell you it's BS, people. It's a real thing.
Yeah, no, I don't. I have not had any impression that it was BS.
Oh, it's rough.
One close friend of mine has been suffering from it pretty harshly.
What kind of things are they?
She has actually this. So now I can talk about 2 other friends who both have extreme sensitivity to sound and to crowds.
Crowds, how so? In the sense that they...
Well, I think it's the noise that crowds produce, and just the this kind of overwhelming sensations.
I'm just checking off the boxes.
Are you?
Here. That
okay.
whole thing with the sound. My daughter is somewhat musical. Maybe you'll meet her. It depends on how long we keep gabbing here. She might come home from school while we're here. But she's very musical, so she's always bebopping, and she'll be snapping her fingers, clapping her hands. And I got to Savannah, you got to stop. I can't take that. It's like, it sounds like a cymbal inside of my head.
Right.
A cymbal crash. And all she's doing is snapping her fingers and clapping her hands.
Yep. That sounds like exactly the kind of, I don't have it at all, but I've heard it described now by several people, this kind of extreme sound sensitivity and sensitivity to
fatigue.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, sure. Yeah. For a number of reasons. One friend, she can't be in groups of people or hasn't been until recently able to be in groups of people for long at all, if at all. So
that's me on a normal day to day, but
are you?
I love meeting people. I love talking to people. I'm the kind of guy, if I have a stand-up show or if I perform a concert, I'm the guy who will last for maybe 5 minutes afterwards talking with the crowd. And then I pretty much lie in their faces and give a reason about why I have to leave, and I'm out of there. Yeah.
So would you do you describe yourself primarily as an introvert?
Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
People wouldn't think it.
Yeah.
With the work that I do, but I am very much an introvert.
Yeah.
I value my privacy to the max. I value my alone time. And then when I want to be around people, who am I around? I'm around Snoopy, our 2 kids, and the occasional podcast guest. Yeah. And that's my social. Yeah. That's my social thing. And I'm very happy with it.
Oh, I totally get that.
You do.
I'm a pretty extreme introvert myself too.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And we have a lot of friends and we entertain fairly frequently, but it can be tough for me to accept an invitation from a friend to go to the gym or go to.
Now is Tyrone more outgoing than
he is? Yeah.
Okay, so
and absolutely.
Do you ever feel guilty because he wants to do something?
I do a little bit, but we have a very open relationship. I mean, in literally all senses, we have a very open relationship, and so it's not
communication.
Uncommon.
You talk.
Yeah.
And he understands when you want to be alone, but you also understand if he wants both of you to go out and do something. There's a balance there. Same here. Same here.
But he knows that he's always, free to go.
Sure.
Hang out with. Sure. Always. Go out, hang out with other friends or whatever.
Snoopy's not the type that wants to hang out, but she likes to have guests come here, and that's where I don't want to say we crash, because again, it's just a dialogue. It's, I tell her when I'm tired or whatever, but she likes to have people come here.
Kind of at the last minute, unexpectedly, or?
I'll say this, she's more open to that than I am, but I think that's the Finnmark in her blood.
They're party people up there, I understand.
Well, not even party people, but just, it's not unusual when we're up at our place up there on Silent that somebody comes, at 1 o'clock in the morning and just walks in.
Oh yes, I've heard that's
you put on the coffee and there's a social visit.
I've heard that kind of thing happens, especially in the summer, I'm guessing.
Yes, and it's very charming. There's something charming about that, and they're beautiful people up there. But I'd like to just keep that tradition up there.
Okay, yeah.
I do value my alone time very much, and I don't know. Now here I am. I'm giving myself an open therapy session, but I've noticed that because I'm nose deep into my book, into writing now, and the little socializing that I would do in the form of phone calls or, just a nice little note to say hi to a friend or something, I kind of noticed that I've been stiff arming a lot of people.
Yeah, okay.
So if you're watching, friends, I do love you. I'm just I'm working. Okay, I'm doing this writing thing.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel
absolutely
the push and pull of that thing?
I absolutely do. I notice that there are people I care about. There are people whose attention I really enjoy, and that
good friends understand
that I have a tendency not to give the same kind of attention back.
But I kind of count on, and maybe you do the same thing, you count on good friends understanding who you are and what you need when it comes to alone time and what you can handle when it comes to socializing.
But yes, absolutely. But I understand that some friends might get irritated that I don't initiate more often. I do understand that. And I've had really just one friend, I remember, a guy I really liked, and he was sort of my best friend in Oslo until he moved to London. And he,
Norwegian guy?
No, he was actually English.
Okay.
And he kind of called me on the carpet about just almost never initiating contact.
Yeah.
And he was right. It's like, that is kind of a introvert weakness of mine.
That's a problem for introverts. Don't call it a weakness, though, my friend. It's not a weakness. It's a character trait.
Yeah.
And not a negative character trait either. It's just who we are.
Yeah,
Am I right?
Well, you're right. That is who we are. But a good friend deserves the compliment of me initiating contact occasionally.
It's a ceremonial cementing of the friendship, of the relationship, to call them and invite them over, to say yes when you are invited.
Yeah.
I think when I've noticed it since COVID, back to COVID and how it's affected our lives. Since COVID, now during COVID, I was just fine with COVID. I did my thing, working from home, no big deal, no change for me really. But I understand that when things loosened up and nothing was shut down anymore, people were kind of hungry for activity, social life, contact with people whom they haven't seen in months, sometimes in years. Whereas I was still the same old me, introvert, still liked his alone time and all that stuff. And I think there was a heightening of tension in some friendships. And it's starting to settle now. People are saying, "Oh yeah, well that's John.
That's who he is.
John's not a partier. And I think it's just taking time for it to, because I'm not going to change. And I'm not saying in the sense of slamming my fist on the table and saying I'm not going to change. It's just that I'm 53 years old and I don't think I'm going to change. I think I'm still an introvert. I think I probably always will be.
Yeah, with a personality like yours, on social media and with the podcast and as a stand-up comic and as a musician, you're out there a lot. And so there's a bit of a surprise that a personality.
I see that.
A personality like yours is essentially introverted.
Yeah, I do see that. But there's this thing in me, and you probably have it too, that artistic side that must be expressed. But that's why I asked you, when your art is displayed and there's all these people that are looking, how does that make you feel? Does it make you feel nervous? Is there any kind of imposter syndrome?
Yeah. Oh, there's definitely a little bit of imposter syndrome, especially since I think like real artists who have studied, would look at my art and say, "Oh, that's so nice," and realistic. Oh, realistic art, how decorative.
Yeah, how quaint. Well, but this whole thing, like you say, real artists with the air quotes and everything. And I just a few minutes ago said, yeah, well, I'm not really a musician because I don't know. Why do we do that to ourselves? Well, because if somebody was in my face saying, "Who do you think you are? You're not a musician," I'd get pretty pissed off.
Yeah.
But here I am saying it to myself.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't get pissed off if somebody said that to me about being an artist, but I would be hurt.
It would be, well, yeah, it would
a little bit.
There would be an emotional reaction that would be less than positive. And here we sit doing these things to us. You're an air quote artist. I'm an air quote musician.
But it's understandable why we do, because neither of us is at all educated in that field, and neither of us are kind of in the actual milieu.
Yeah.
I'm certainly not in any kind of artist's milieu in Oslo at all.
No.
So I just do my thing, and some people like it enough to spend some money on it. So.
Fortunately, well, no, you're not in this for the money.
No, but I certainly liked earning it.
And that is so refreshing to hear. I kind of walked you into that. I wanted to see how you would respond. I've had a lot of artists, musicians and whatnot, sitting on that couch. And, well, I just do it for the sake of the art. And come on, what's wrong with getting paid for what you do?
Oh, nothing.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
And no, it was quite flattering.
Yeah.
And I also love the idea that my artworks are spread out on a couple different continents now.
Isn't that cool?
And I'll never see any of them again, but other people will, and some of them will, live on. And, I collect art also. I have,
And the thought of it being a conversation piece, something that you did, you created this, and it's going to stimulate conversation.
Right.
It's going to bring out feelings in people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or that people just have up on their wall and, see all the time, or on the ceiling, yes, in rare circumstances.
Hey, there is a purpose for it. There is a purpose for it. Sound damping.
Yeah, you said it was sound damping.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Who knows? Maybe one day I'll get one of your paintings on my ceiling.
Maybe you will.
A Sistine, if you will. Sistine Chapel.
Who is that blonde painter?
That is Snoopy.
It is Snoopy, okay.
There is a artist, may he rest in peace. He was a local hero, Jan Bordevik. I ran into him through the Remy Brothers band. I'm the lyricist for them. Very well-known band here in Drammen, actually in all of Norway. They got Album of the Year. An album that I wrote got Album of the Year in Sweden in 2010, something like that.
Wow.
Very proud of that. Yeah.
I should guess.
So Jan Bordevik, great artist. He did a lot of things, among them stage banners with logos and artwork for bands. And it's kind of funny to me because Snoopy is so humble when it comes to things like this. People go out of their way here in Drammen, at least some of the people I've run into, they go out of their way to say, well, I knew Jan Bordevik.
Okay.
And they'll tell their Jan Bordevik stories. Snoopy was practically best friends with him. I want to say she was maybe, we'll have to ask her, I want to say she was maybe 20, 21 when he painted that picture of her and gave it to her. They used to hang out all the time, and she's just very humble and quiet about it.
Well, it's beautiful. She looks great in it, but it's also character filled.
Yes. He got you'll see. He got the details down. Now her hair is not as blonde anymore. Now she's one of those seasonal blondes where the sun hits it and it's blonde. So now she's kind of more of a strawberry blonde as she normally is.
Yeah.
But that's her when she was 21 or so.
Did you know, aside here, did you know they can tell by genetic analysis whether you are predisposed to have hair that changes color in sun or not?
No.
Yeah. That was one of the many interesting things I found out when I had genetic analysis done recently by 23andMe.
I think that's a fascinating thing, that your hair will change color,
Yeah.
Our son, we have Irish in my family going a couple generations back, and our son has dark hair, like a very dark brown, almost black, but in the summertime, it looks like somebody sprayed him with red highlights.
Oh, okay.
In the summertime.
Yeah, I used to have dark brown hair, and something similar happened to me when I was like a teenager or a kid. We hung out at the pool so much, out in the sun so much, that my hair kind of turned red also.
Yeah, Snoopy's doesn't change as much now as she's aging. Yes, Snoopy is aging. She had a birthday. It was yesterday, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
So it doesn't change as much in the summer, but it will get a little bit lighter. But when we first met, it would be quite blonde in the summer. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
I think she's an alien. I don't think she's human.
How long have you not had hair?
I started shaving my head in maybe 2012, just because it was thinning out. And let's just say it like it is. It's not so much now, but back then it was impossible to find anybody that knew how to cut black hair. So I started doing it for myself, by myself for a while. There's that fumbling with words. That's brain fog. But I started doing it by myself, and it turned out okay, but I just got tired of trying to, hook myself up with a fade and stuff. So I just started shaving it.
Okay.
Been doing it since around 2012. Yeah.
Were you able to find a fade here in Drammen in 2012?
That's the problem. Well, we were up north then, so forget it.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm not sure when barbers started doing black hair in Drammen, but when we first were down south here, back when we first came to Norway, there was no one to be found. So it was a problem. Yeah. Unfortunately. So no, the bald look is in for me.
Oh, of course. Oh, it totally is.
But I used to have long hair, if you can imagine that.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Long, down past my shoulders.
Yeah. I've only met you face to face today, but I've seen enough photos of you, and this.
I'm gonna see if I can. I'm gonna see if I can find something from way back in the day. I'll post it up there. See what people think.
That would
be. Will not recognize me.
I'll bet.
Here we are. We've been talking for an hour.
Have we? Good heavens.
Yes, we have. Hold on. Okay. And we're back. By the magic of modern technology, that was a millisecond for you guys, but it was about 2 minutes of blabbering between Brad and I. I was going to say, I absolutely adore Snoopy, but I tease her relentlessly. The latest was today. And that was true. Did you see that post about what she was? I went on Zillow. We're looking at investing back home on Zillow Homes.
Yeah.
And I was on her account. She's got the broader search on there.
Yes, I did see. I did see that post.
And I kid you not,
she was
in
literally
Mississippi. Looking at, here's the thing, not buying a home in Mississippi, but buying property in Mississippi, like 40 acres, 50. I'm
What's
like,
happening? What is she thinking? What's the plan here?
And she's so innocent of such things. Now, you and I think immediately a biracial couple, black man, white woman, buying property in Mississippi.
Right.
It's kind of touch and go about whether or not we'll be accepted there or not, right? But Snoop is just, I mean, she's not American, okay? Of course, she's been told things, but she hasn't experienced it herself. And it fascinates me, the culture differences there.
I've never been, but I've never been to Mississippi.
But the culture differences and life experiences between me and Snoopy.
Okay, sure.
She has, she's quite urbane and knowledgeable here in Norway. But if we go back to 2002, we were freshly married. Of course, we had already been together for a couple years before that. So she should have, I assumed, kind of gotten the vibe of the South Chicago suburbs, right? And in that vibe process, I had told her, you don't want to go out for a walk when it starts getting close to dark. It's not safe. She didn't get it. She's this hillbilly from Finnmark in Hudum, and she's going to walk when she wants to.
Okay.
Well, let's just say the town rapist literally chased her a couple blocks down the road. She had to run into a bakery and call. She says, she runs into a bakery and she says, "What's the number for the police?" Not knowing that she could have just called me on the job at the time,
Yes,
or just
okay.
call 911.
Yeah.
Just a totally different way of thinking about how the police respond.
Okay,
You know
sure.
how it is here in Norway. You call the police, you're going to have to wait a while
Yes,
before you
yeah.
get any kind of service. Yeah. And it's a testimony to that that culture divide. She didn't see the danger in walking, you know, in the late afternoon, early evening.
Yeah, I mean, well, that makes sense to me having lived here.
Just like she doesn't see the problem with looking for property in Mississippi with the black husband.
Yeah.
Oh, do you guys, do you see any of that with Trond? Any?
No, Trond has a very international outlook and experience, and I do not bump into that issue with him much at all. But also, of course, we're two guys around age 60, so you know the difference.
So life has happened
between being, you know, a very muscular black guy and your blonde white wife is going to be a much greater difference than anything Trond and I will ever experience.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. She also went into again, not knowing the social dynamic and the criminal dynamic. Went shopping on a weekend, late in the evening in Chicago in a bad neighborhood. And she said when she got out of the Blazer, we had a Chevy Blazer, you know, with a tire on the back and everything. Yeah. And she said a bunch of guys were looking at her and she heard them saying something about the tire. She didn't think anything of it. So she comes back out and they had taken the tire.
Oh.
Little things like that that anybody else would know. You don't. First of all, you don't go shopping in that neighborhood, especially at night.
Okay.
And then when you see a bunch of guys looking and pointing and talking about your tire.
Okay.
But that was, you know, this is in 2002, and those things just weren't happening here in Norway.
Yeah. No.
So.
You said South Chicago. Did you read Michelle Obama's biography?
You know what? Shame on me. I bought that. I pre-ordered it, so I got it as soon as it was available, and I still haven't read it. Shame on me.
Well, I thought it was so good, but I was going to ask, is that where she grew up? I think it is.
Yes. 1 second, everybody. That's Snoopy calling.
Michelle.
She grew up in, Chicago. Yeah, South Chicago.
Yeah, I thought so.
A war zone.
I guess.
I'm not sure exactly how it was back in her day, but when we were living in the south suburbs, so we weren't in Chicago proper. We were in a suburb that bordered South Chicago, and we were in a very nice suburb, but that Chicago trouble has a way of leaking into the surrounding areas.
Oh, you should read it. You should really read it.
I need to do that.
I think you'll have him. You know, I loved it. I thought it was really just interesting. You know, and she, you know, just her intelligence flies out.
She is quite the person. I just, and her husband as well. I think both of them are, regardless of his politics. I just think they're at heart good people.
Yeah, you absolutely get that.
Yeah,
get that.
Yeah.
Idea from watching them.
South Chicago though was, I tell people this all the time. Moving to Chicago, because I'm from Ohio. Moving to Chicago was a bigger culture shock for me than it was for me to move from Chicago to Norway.
Oh.
I felt like I was coming home when I came to Norway. I'm from a small town. Read my book, check out my book when it comes. And actually in a couple of weeks, you guys can subscribe to, you don't mind if I plug myself?
No, plug away.
Nobody else is going to do it. In a couple of weeks, there'll be a subscription available to you people. If you like my voice, you'll be able to listen to me read one chapter a week to you guys.
Cool.
Starting with chapter 1 and going all the way until the book is finished. Now, the fun thing about that, now everybody's heard of an audiobook before, but this is pre-editing. Basically, I'm writing a chapter and immediately reading it in, pre-edit.
Okay. Cool.
And people get to hear me. The funding, the money will go towards funding the release of the edited hard copy and paperback. So I found
that sounds really cool.
I found an opportunity to plug that.
I would absolutely be interested to hear that.
Well, thank you. I'm having so much fun. And here comes that imposter syndrome thing. I'm having so much fun. I'm really on a roll. I've gotten, several chapters written, up in the teens, I'll say that. And I'm on a roll, but I'm afraid I'm going to lose it, lose the motivation, lose the flow. So I'm doing this partly to motivate myself, keep myself motivated. You know, I have to keep writing because I promised these people this subscription. So I've got to do it.
Yes, yeah.
But also, it's a good way. You know, I'm self-publishing, and that costs money.
Of course.
So again, to fund that release, that's why the subscription. And I just want to have fun with it.
Yeah.
I want to pull people in and get them in on the process and hopefully keep them entertained a little bit. So,
well, you're lucky as a writer. You're lucky that you have all of this, that you have your voice, and you also have all of this equipment set up to do that reading.
I am incredibly fortunate, first of all, to have the wife that I have, but also to have this set up and be able to do the things that I love. This is what I do right here at home. This is my thing. Don't have to go anywhere, man. It's all right here. Listen, Snoopy is making, I could keep talking to you for hours, and we're going to keep talking after we stop recording this. But Snoopy's getting that cappuccino ready. So
yes, cappuccino waits. Chilly day in Drummond.
I just want to say on the mic, and I'm going to say it 1,000 times before you leave my home, I'm so glad you're here, Brad.
Yeah, me too. Thanks for the invitation.
This is step one of our friendship.
That's great.
Before we were just people who knew each other online. Now we're friends.
Yeah.
So you always have a place here. You got to bring Trond. I'd love to meet him as well.
Well, vice
you guys
versa.
always have a place here, whether it's on my show or in my kitchen drinking coffee.
Well, thank you.
Much love to you, man. Thank you so much. Oh, you know what? I have to do one thing, two things actually, before we go, and this will be quick. I do this with everybody who comes. The people that I have come on, they are people who inspire me, people who motivate me, people who I think I can learn something from. Okay, so that's you.
Okay,
right?
Thanks.
With that in mind, I'm going to say 3 words to you.
Oh, God.
And I want you to finish the sentence. Okay?
All right.
Brad Staubes is...
a cranky, but ultimately friendly expat. Yeah.
I think you're quite accurate.
Yeah.
I think that's good.
Maybe.
And again, your crankiness, your snarkiness, as I call it, is not mean-spirited in the slightest bit. You've pissed some people off now. Let's tell the truth.
That happens.
But I don't find it mean-spirited. I see the humor underneath all of that.
Yeah. Well, good. Thank you. Yeah.
Second thing I like to ask of you, again, the whole thing about you being one of these people who inspire me. I'm not going to invite someone into my home and on my program if they don't inspire me, motivate me, bring out something in me, okay? Along those lines, can you say something, few sentences, paragraph, say something to my viewers and listeners out there that can possibly inspire them, motivate them, help them as they're going through this thing we call life?
Well, we touched maybe 15 minutes ago on one of the sort of themes of my life, as, among other things, a very out gay man. And that's this idea that, fear, or even to a certain extent caution, has not guided me through life very much, but exactly the opposite. Doing the riskier thing or taking a chance. And, I think one example is the fact that I'm here in Norway at all.
Yeah.
Moved here at age 45
Yeah.
To a country that where English is not the first language spoken. Of course, it's really easy to get by in English here, but that was a risk, and that was a thing that I know so many of my older friends from the U.S. would never have considered actually doing.
You're right. You're right.
And
it's a rare thing we've done.
Yeah. And it was, I guess it was risky, but it never felt risky to me. It was like that was a risk that I wanted to take. That was a change that I wanted to do.
It was a natural development in the course of your life, right?
Yeah. And I have felt frustration with certain acquaintances recently, who I see that they make choices based primarily in fear or caution. And I'm like, be less cautious.
Yeah.
Be less fearful,
Yeah.
It
doesn't hurt. Well, it does hurt sometimes, but not long.
Well, it can. I mean, risks go south sometimes, but
the benefits.
Right. This is the thing. The benefits of having an out there riskier life for me have just been huge. So, so that would be my recommendation.
Be like Brad, in other words.
Be like me.
No, but those are some good words. That is, this is why I feel so good meeting more and more Americans in Norway, because it gives me that reminder that we are adventurous. And when I say we, I mean humanity. We are adventurous beings in our core. What an adventure we're on.
Right? And you especially find that adventurous spirit in expats.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's not an easy thing we're doing, but it is certainly educational.
Yes,
It really is.
Yeah.
And we develop.
And life altering.
And life altering. Absolutely. Well, we have so much in common, you and I. We're both artists of a sort. Scratch that, of a sort. We are both artists.
We are.
Yeah. Imposter syndrome, go away.
That's right.
And we both have relationships, marriages with beautiful Norwegians. How about that? And another thing we have in common, we're both going to go in there and have some cappuccino.
We are.
Listen, everybody, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being here, Brad.
My pleasure. Thanks.
I love you all. I want you guys to go out there and love somebody in return, be loved in return, and enjoy the process, okay? Thank you so much. Bye.